Welcome to Uncharted. I'm your host, Captain Kelly, and with me today is Kevin Koenig, also known as the Yacht Fella. Kevin is an award-winning journalist whose work appears everywhere: New York Times, Esquire, GQ, Wall Street Journal, Men's Journal, Rod Report, and like a bazillion marine publications. He's everywhere. He's also the former executive editor of Yachting magazine and is one of the world's foremost marine journalists. And when he's not talking about boats, he likes to talk about philosophy, combat sports, artificial intelligence. And today, he's going to share how his uncharted path got him to where he is now. So, welcome, Kevin.
Oh, thank you for having me, Kelly. I'm really excited to be here.
No. So listen, we just happened to bump into each other a while back just by chance at a Benetti Yachtmaster event and on the trolley where I was thinking that I was going to be sitting next to another captain, and lo and behold, here is this like world-renowned journalist. I had like literally no idea. I mean, how cool is that? And like, I think you might even challenge me for having been able to be more places around this globe than I actually have. So you've literally been everywhere, all the way around the world. Like, tell us about some of the coolest places you've been. But first, tell us where you're from.
I'm from New Jersey, born and bred. I live in Greenwich, Connecticut. And I travel probably about 70 days a year. These days I have two little kids, so I try to limit it. It used to be closer to 90 or 100. But yeah, 70 is about right. So I'm all over the place.
Oh, that's awesome. Where are some, like, where all have you been? Where are some of the coolest places that you've gone? Where do you like to go to?
Oh gosh. I love the Med. I love to go to Italy for the food. South of France is fantastic. Stockholm is one of my favorite cities in Europe. Istanbul is also one of my favorite cities in Europe just because of the architecture and the history. I love the food and the culture. It's just like, sometimes when I go certain places, like if you drop me in like Taiwan or somewhere, if you're by yourself, it's a little too much to get around. It's just a little too alien to navigate, I find. But Istanbul, if I'm in Italy or France or somewhere, it feels very easy to get around. Istanbul is like a bit of a challenge because it's like a nice mix of cultures. It's very different from what Americans know and what a lot of Westerners know, but it's also lightly familiar as well. So it's a cool place.
So when you go to these places, are you going to write for writing purposes? Or are you going for fun or some other sort of research? Like, what takes you to all these really cool places?
Pretty much all my travel is work. If I travel for fun, I'm usually going skiing with my family. I travel a ton by myself, all over the place, to write, to test boats, to do sea trials on, any kind of boat you can imagine, honestly. A power boat. I don't really do sailboats, for the most part. People send me, the magazines send me, or the builders fly me over, or sometimes I'm on my own dime if I need to do that. And I go to the boats and get on board and check them out and write about them. It's a dream job.
Now, no, that definitely is. Now, have you always been into sailing and boating then? Like, did you grow up with it, or did you just kind of fall into it as you got into journalism? Tell me.
Half and half, honestly. So growing up, we had a little bungalow at the Jersey Shore. Shout out Chadwick Beach Island. And we had a little sea ray, like a 21, 23-foot sea ray named Respite. So I knew boats. I knew port and starboard. We sold it by the time I was 18. So I knew enough about boats to get started in the industry. But writing was always my main focus. My mother was an AP English teacher, and I majored in writing with a focus on rhetoric as well as European history in college. And I just kind of always wanted to write for Esquire magazine. I wanted to be Hemingway, Faulkner. I wanted to, put on paper what I felt about the world. It's a lot easier to say that when you're 22 than it is to actually go out in the world and do it, as I found out rather quickly. So I graduated college. None of the big English companies were hiring. So I ended up at a law firm as a legal assistant, working 100-hour weeks in the middle of Times Square for a very big, powerful law firm, and quickly realized that I was not going to be a lawyer, because I hated it, and I just couldn't do it. It was terrible. I made some great friends, one of whom actually also became a very famous writer named Thomas Chatterton Williams. We didn't share an office, but we basically shared an office doing that job. So I left there. I got into a program at Columbia University that focused on magazine writing and publishing. And I did that for a little bit, and I did that on my own dime. So my parents were like, "We're not paying for anything for you." So what I'd saved up at the law firm, I blew basically on Columbia. And I got out, and got some internships around New York City writing, but really couldn't. I got an internship at Esquire for free, working for free as a 23-year-old or whatever. It was crazy. I don't know how I survived. Honestly. And they didn't hire me after that. There were no jobs there. And I kind of just through a friend of mine from college, I had a connection. The most random thing that ever could have happened was he worked on a desk at Goldman Sachs, like the number one banking company in the entire world. And he was like, "Hey, there's a spot on our desk doing credit derivatives. I think you should come try it out." And I was like, "Dude, I don't even know what a bond is. Like, this is ridiculous." And he said, "Now come in, they'll like you." And they did. I was basically a personality hire. They liked drinking beer with me, and they kept me on for 3 years, and until the market crashed one day in December 2008, and they fired my entire desk at the same moment. All of our computers basically froze, and then all of our phones rang at exactly the same time, and then we all got fired, which was fucking awesome because I got a huge severance pack. Can I curse? Can I curse this?
Yeah, you can. Absolutely. Right. Yeah, I'm a sailor. I mean, come on.
It was awesome. I remember it was like 10 a.m. and all my coworkers went out to a bar and wanted to get drunk, and they were all feeling bad. And I remember walking straight out of Goldman Sachs headquarters at 85 Broad Street and jumping up in there and clicking my heels like a leprechaun. I was so happy. Because I had this big severance and I hated the job, and I knew I wanted to go do something completely different with my life. So I was unemployed in New York City for quite some time, almost a year. And I had some money in my pocket, thankfully, because I'd been working at a well-paying job and had that severance. And I basically just partied my way around the entire city. It was a point in time where I don't think there was a bar in New York that I had not stepped foot in. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to go back to a cube ever.
But had you always wanted, so let's digress for a second, because you started off by talking about how, your mom was an English teacher, right? Mm-hmm. And so you've kind of grown up around writing, so to speak. Did you always know that you wanted to be a journalist? Did you always know that you wanted to study writing?
Yeah. Well, what happens is you get a little sidetracked. I was a very good student, and I went to some very good schools. And when you go to these schools, they tell you, you're going to be rich. You're going to be an investment banker. You're going to be a corporate lawyer. You're going to be a consultant, and you're going to make, X amount of money in your 20s. And by your 30s, you're going to be making in 7 figures and blah, 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 blah. So that's very tempting. And that made me stray from a path which I really probably should have been on the entire time was writing. So that's my strength. I tell people I think it is the only thing I could do professionally. It's what I love to do and what I'm best at.
But, I want to point out something that you said is when everybody got let go, you were jumping up and down for joy and super excited, and everybody else was wallowing in their sorrows. And so for anybody listening, and I really like to talk to the young adult age group because it's hard. We get so much pressure, I think, put on us as a young adult. What are you going to do for the rest of your life? You're 27 years old. How the hell are you not going to know what you're going to do for the next 80 years? And when are you getting married? And when are you buying a house? When are you having kids? And when are you doing all this stuff? You're supposed to make all these decisions. You're supposed to make a decision about what you're going to be, what the rest of your life is going to look like in your 20s. And it sounds kind of like, almost in a way, you went through that prescribed path that I think a lot of us do, but you found out, no, this isn't what I want to do. I want to do what I want to do.
Yeah, I found that out pretty quickly. And I honestly spent a lot of years in my 20s suffering for it because I was just trying to be this person that I wasn't, and I was miserable at those jobs. Like I hated them. I was a just terrible person to be around. I think for a lot of people, I was very negative, and I knew I wasn't good at them either, so I wasn't excelling. And I was like, oh shit, like this is what I'm been training to do or thought I was training to do for a long time, and all my friends were crushing it from my peer group at that point, and I was like just failing, falling so far behind them. It made no sense to me. It was very frustrating, and I wish I could go back and tell that kid like, listen, there's no point A to point B. You play to your strengths, and you take deep breaths and you look for that higher ground. If you keep doing that on a day-to-day basis and you just persevere and try to get better regardless of what it is, if you're just trying to get to that, never taking that step down, always taking that step up towards something, you'll find that thing that you want, that brass ring or whatever.
And look, it's hard, when you're in your 20s, everybody's telling you to go and do what you're passionate about, but you also got to do something that's going to pay the bills as well. If underwater basket weaving is your passion, I'm not so sure that you're going to make a livable wage on that. Maybe these days, if you could film it and have it all over social media, that might be kind of cool. But so there's a balance when you're in your 20s, and then you've got this of doing what you love, but also doing something that'll pay the bills because you're coming out of college probably broke, and so you have to sort that out along with all of the other societal pressures, maybe pressures you've got coming from your family. So you talked about how you were negative, you were a grump, you weren't very fun to be around. So take us down that path a little bit and share with us what you went through, how you got through it, a little bit more, like you said, if you could talk to that young man again today, what you would say. So what was that like?
Oh, I would say I was more than a grump. I was probably like deeply depressed. I think anybody would have probably diagnosed me at that point in my life with full blown depression. I like felt so trapped and I hated it. And I was just like dying on the inside, which is why I was so happy when someone kicked me out the door, because I wasn't going to leave on my own right because they were paying me. And, you get used to getting a certain salary and bonus and all that kind of stuff. I wasn't going to quit. So getting a good kick in the butt out the door was the best thing that could happen to me. And a huge thing that turned around for my mental outlook was actually getting into the marine industry and being hired at Power and Motor Yacht in 2009 or 10. I can't remember the year. And it was the first time I felt like, well, I got to travel, I got to write professionally, and like they weren't paying me anything. Like, I was scraping by.
So did you finally say at some point, screw this, I'm done with the banking jobs, I'm going to go do what I want to go do, which is write. I've got a hell of a degree behind me, hell of an education, I come from a great school, I'm going to take this and I'm going to go do what I want to go do? Was there like that moment, or did you just kind of fall into?
The moment found me. I was super into physical fitness back then. I was working out like crazy, and I was reading all the like Lone Survivor and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll try out for OCS and go try to do special forces or something like that. And I was seriously considering taking the FDNY exam, becoming a fireman. I like physical stuff. I still do. And the writing thing, I had in the back of my mind because I guess I was still applying for jobs, but I guess I wasn't really taking it seriously because I didn't think it was something that I thought I was too old. Like, my other friend that I mentioned that became a famous writer had very early success, and he published his first book when he was like 24 or something like that. And that's how it is with a lot of writers. You're kind of like a supernova talent, and you get discovered very quickly. I felt like at 28 I was too old, but I applied online,
which is so young now that we're 28 is like.
And it's great. I'm 42 now. I'm like, 28 is so young. So yeah, I applied online. There was a website called mediabistro.com, and I applied to a associate editor position at a magazine called Power and Motor Yacht, which I had never heard of before.
Had you had any experience writing up to this point, or was it all banking?
Well, I had written I'd interned at Esquire. I had done some freelance stuff for Men's Fitness. I had like a little bit of a portfolio, enough to kind of I'd worked with some friends, I wrote for some friends like blogs and stuff like that. So I had stuff to like writing samples basically.
Okay.
And I applied to this job at Power and Motor Yacht and forgot I applied because 2 months went by and nothing happened. And then I was sitting on my couch one day in a little rent control apartment on the Upper East Side. That was literally like probably 10 by 12 feet. It was tiny. And my phone rang and it was this woman with a thick Ukrainian accent, and she was trying to like explain something to me. And I was like, what are you talking about? I almost hung up on her. And she convinced me to stay on the line. And it was the secretary, the executive assistant for the editor-in-chief of Power Motor Yacht. And she was like, oh, you applied to this job and blah, blah, blah. Can you come in? I was like, oh, shit. Okay, sure. So I went.
I better not hang up.
Yeah, if I had hung up that call, I don't know where my life would have ended up. Like, it's really, it could have gone sideways quick. I don't know where I would have been, honestly.
You know, you say the job found you. You kind of bumped into it. Yes and no. I liked it. God, I'm aging myself. I'm 42 as well. But you know, I was a teacher before being a yacht captain, a chemistry professor, and so my inner teacher always comes out. And I like to tell my young crew members, you know, yes, things will find you, but not unless you have your eyes open. Not unless you got your eyes peeled to any opportunity that may be along. So don't go through life just bobbling along. Make sure that you go through life eyes wide open. That way that you're ready for that opportunity when it does bump into you.
Mm-hmm. And you got to stay ready, right? You got to work hard to make sure, that old saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get. You need to make sure your skills are sharp and your mind's in the right place, and you're doing your networking and all these kinds of things that kind of make opportunities happen for yourself. That's super important, I think, for young people to know. So yeah, for me, I went in and interviewed with Captain Richard Thiel, the late Captain Richard Thiel. He was an awesome man. And we had like a 2-hour interview, and I thought he was going to hire me on the spot because it went so well. And I thought he was going to hire me. And then I went home that night and he sent me a picture of a boat. It was an 82 Viking, which I knew was a Viking. I didn't know what model it was. There was no caption or anything. And he asked me to write 1,000 words on it by 3 p.m. the next day. And I was
Lord.
Whoa, shit. So, I mean, but just by fate, it happened to be a Viking. So I knew what it was, again, because I had like limited boating experience. We had the little Sea Ray. And I remember sitting at the Manasquan Inlet with my dad when I was a kid, and we'd go fishing, and we'd see Grady White go by, and my dad would say, that's a good boat. And then we'd see a Viking go by, and he'd say, and that's a really good boat. So I knew what a Viking was, thank goodness. And so I kind of I did some research on the model I thought it was, and I knew it was fast. So I titled it Born to Run, and I stayed up all night, wove a bunch of Springsteen quotes into this like fake sea trial review of this boat that I wrote. I hit 1,000 words, 9 a.m. next day, sent it in, and I got hired. So 2 weeks later, I was in the Bahamas testing the fastest jet ski ever built. And that was 15 years ago. And now here I am, the yacht fella.
Wow. So now, would you change anything? You've been through some ups and some downs. It sounds very much like you and I were very similar in the way that we handled our 20s. I've heard some people say that the 20s were the best time of their life. And I look back going, oh my God, they were the hardest time of my life, trying to figure out which end is up. I was severely depressed. I was suicidal when I was in my 20s. And so for me, it was hard. But looking back, I wouldn't change a thing, because everything that I went through, the toughest moments, made me who I am today. And I was able to always try and make a positive out of negative, find the silver lining to it. So would you change anything about your path?
Not about my path, because I think you're exactly right. The suffering. Well, I was thinking about this. I saw a quote from Joe Rogan, of all people, that day, and he was like, "Oh, the suffering is. You wouldn't change things. The suffering's worth it." And I think you can say that suffering's worth it if you've gotten somewhere where you feel like you've succeeded. I think if you're still suffering, you're not going to say like, "Oh, the suffering is worth it," right? It's kind of a privilege to say that the suffering is is a good thing.
But
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 I
thinking back,
understand this. I understand the sentiment for sure, because it hardens you and it makes you appreciate. It makes you a lot more grateful for the good things when they do come.
because think about it, the people that might be listening that are down in the dumps and they're just thinking that, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. But here we are, we can say, look, I was there. I was where you are. And I felt like that at the same time. I mean, I was ready to end it all. I didn't want to be upright on this planet anymore. I mean, it sucked. But now I can say that I'm so glad that I pushed through. I'm so glad that I put the work in. And looking back, as sucky as it was, I wouldn't change it because it was those moments, even the shittiest of them, that made me stronger and made me who I am. So I kind of feel, and tell me if you agree, for anybody that's listening, that you will get through them. You do have to put the work in. You do have to put the effort to get through them, but it's so worth it on the other side. And there really is a light at the other end of the tunnel.
Yeah, things change, but nothing changes. Nothing changes, right? Like if you're a kid and you're like I was, and you're 27 years old, or like you were, and you're deeply depressed, and you're like, what? This shit is not fucking worth it. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't like. Maybe I'll just fucking jump out a window. I don't care. Like I've been there, and what I wish someone had told me back then, there were a lot of things I wish someone had told me. I wish someone had told me to be easier on myself and to be mindful of my inner monologue, because I think that's really where a lot of depression comes from, and a lot of people being down about themselves is the way that they speak to themselves in their own head, and it's fucking brutal. I bet people listening out there, if you think about the way you speak to yourself in your head, it's horrible. One of the best pieces of advice I ever heard was to speak to yourself in your head like you would speak to someone you were in charge of that you love and you have to take care of. So like a good.
So you are echoing my words completely, because I do say all the time, the conversations that we have with ourselves are the most important conversations you will ever have. And I was very much like you, very hard on myself, very mean to myself. And somebody said this to me just a few years ago, and they said, and I was picking myself apart. I was being hard on myself about some things, and they said to me, would you say this to your best friend?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, God, no. I would encourage my best friend, and I would tell them how good of a job they're doing, and encourage them and try to help them. And so she says to me, why in the hell are you talking to yourself like this then?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that was like an epiphany. That was such a pivotal moment. And I was like, and so I use that line. I use those two lines all of the time. The conversations that you have in your head are the most important conversations you'll ever have. And if you wouldn't talk to your best friend like that, then why in the hell would you talk to yourself like that?
Yep. It's one of the most important things. Just being easier on yourself and kinder to yourself. I think kindness is one of the most important things one of the most important traits a person can have, along with perseverance and a sense of humor. And
being kind. Being kind. And
I said, you need to extend it to yourself.
And I said that it's funny. Wow. Oh my God, there's so many similarities in between you and I, and so many mottos that you have that are just identical. And I said this at the end of a speech I gave in Monaco at the yacht show. And at the end of it, I said, if you can be anything, just be kind. And you could have heard a pin drop in the room. It just resonated with everybody. But until you hear somebody say these things to you, be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. It's really that simple, but sometimes it's not that simple, so be nicer to yourself, be easier on yourself, because and you too, I was so hard on myself. I still am, but I've learned how to dial that back a little bit and go a little bit easier on myself.
Yeah, you need to really be mindful of it, right? Like I still fall into that pattern occasionally. My wife will usually pick up on it even before I will, where she can tell that I'm just being really hard on myself. And listen, holding yourself to high standards is great. I'm not saying that. I hold myself to very high standards with everything that I care about, with being a father,
Cool.
with writing, I'm very into jiu-jitsu. I try to do things as best as I possibly can. And there's a difference between holding yourself to a high standard and just being a dick to yourself. You don't want to do the latter.
Yeah. I mean, really, it really boils down to would you have this conversation with your best friend? Yeah, if your best friend needs a swift kick in the ass, okay, well then give it to them. But if your best friend needs kindness and love and encouragement, then that's what you should be telling
Mhm.
yourself. That's huge. So tell me, what is next for you?
What is next? What is next? I'm working on a book about Burgess right now, the brokerage house. So that's taking up a lot of my time. Their 50th anniversary is coming up, so
Wait,
they
you already have another book that's out, right? That
I have two.
you owe me a signed copy of, like
Yeah,
the next time I see you?
I wrote one on Benetti that came out about a month ago. So if you're going to be in Palm Beach, they're doing a couple of events that I'd love for you to come to. I'm hosting one.
Is you going to be here?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
I'll be there too.
awesome.
Yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
hosting an event with Osceline and Benetti to launch the book at the Osceline store. That's the publisher, the Osceline store in Palm Beach, and then Benetti has a thing the following night that I think I'm hosting. I'm not quite sure. You never know with the Italians.
No, I definitely would love to come and support, and I hope you come too. I have 3 events this year at Palm Beach as well. My first meet and greet, so I'm super excited about that, and then my 2 talks, one on mental health and yachting, and then the other leadership in yachting, which you know you've been in the industry long enough to know that we need a little love in those a couple of those areas, you know.
Yeah,
So no, super excited. I definitely will be at your event. I can't wait for that. So
great.
okay, awesome. Well, look, this has been, I mean, what an awesome episode. I mean, you've really, this is a home run for me, and you've really hit a lot of high points and a lot of the same messages. And I think so for anybody listening, especially, and I say the young adult, that's just because that's my favorite age group, but people are my favorite. And, so hopefully for anyone listening that they hear this and at the end of this, I think the takeaway is if you're anything, just be kind to yourself.
Hmm.
Just go easy on yourself. So
And take your mental health seriously. Yachting is a macho business, and I think especially for young men, it's extremely difficult to admit that you're struggling mentally. And I think it's actually a real act of bravery to reach out for help, whether to a friend, to a professional, to anybody. Like if you're that guy who's sitting you're 27 years old, 28 years old, and you're sitting at the end of the bar, drowning yourself in whiskey and feeling bad for yourself and going home and having thoughts that, maybe life isn't worth it or whatever. Get fucking help. Stop being an idiot. Reach out. The help is there, and there's light on the other side of the tunnel, and you're not doing yourself any favors. You're not doing anything good for yourself by wallowing in your sorrow. Let somebody help you. It doesn't make you soft at all. I'm here to tell you. I can beat
you
up
know what?
anybody. I can beat up anybody in the yachting industry. I guarantee you that. Soft.
You know what? And I thought this was the end of our podcast, but it's not. And I got you for a few more minutes because you went somewhere that's huge. Mental health. Why I hold talks on it all over the world is so huge to me because of like what I said earlier. I was in the dumps. I didn't want to be on this side of the dirt anymore. But at 39 and I'm 42 now, I said I'm the happiest I've ever been, and I've continued to say it. But you hit the nail on the head. Get fucking help. You cannot do this alone. If you're depressed, if you're struggling with drugs and alcohol, which is a huge abuse of drugs and alcohol in this industry. And, look, this industry is an industry that we have to put a smile on our face all day, every day, regardless of what's going on in our head. This is a luxury industry. This is an industry where people, the owners and the guests go to get away and have fun. So whatever you got going on in your head, you gotta squash that stuff. You gotta put the smile on. And that's hard. And then you talk about crew, living together, working together, playing together. I mean, you're together all the time. If someone's bullying you, you probably can't get away from them at the end of the day because you're sharing a cabin with them, or, you've got crew members that are drinking too much or they're doing drugs, trying to cover up whatever it is. You can't do it. You cannot, you don't go to a mechanic if you have to have brain surgery. So why in the hell would you try to go to the bar to fix your depression instead of going and seeing a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist? And if you've got, for me personally, I knew that something was wrong biochemically And I went and I got on the drugs that I needed to. And I also went into intensive therapy. I worked on my shit. And I'm so, so happy now and so glad to be here. So I think you're right to say, you can't fix it by yourself. You're not a coward, man or woman, 20 years, 50 years old. I mean, I don't care. Get the help because you can't do it alone and it is so worth it.
Yeah, I think of therapy like going to the gym. Like, why would you not do that? Like, you have your intellectual part of your body that you can exercise by reading and doing whatever else smart people do. You can go to the gym to get your muscles strong and get your body right. And then the third part of you as a person is your spirit and your psyche. And the way to go to the gym to get that stronger and to make yourself better and happier is to see a therapist. And you don't need to see a therapist for the rest of your life. If you're struggling, you go see a therapist and find a good one. Sometimes it takes a long time to find one, a little bit of work. But it's work. People say, I'm working on myself. It's real fucking work. You got to do it. But when you do it, I promise you'll get better.
But I want to point that out. You brought up another good point. So not everybody needs not to be on a drug, an antidepressant, or an anti-anxiety, whatever you want to call that. I did, and here's the thing: is it took me 4 tries to find the right one. So you pointed out a good thing. Just because you're going to the psychiatrist, just because you're seeing a therapist, it doesn't mean the first one that you try is going to fix it all.
Right.
So I had to try.
Dating.
Yeah, you know what it is. It is.
Just because you had one bad girlfriend, what are you going to say? Like, oh, just no more girlfriends for me. I'm just going to be a hermit. No.
Well, exactly.
Try it out.
When I started therapy, it took me. I was lucky enough on my second try to find a therapist that worked for me, and so it's not a one size fits all. And it was a combination for me, unfortunately I was able to get off my antidepressants and my anti-anxieties. And I went through a period of time where I was intensive therapy, week after week after week. And now here's the other thing too, is people forget that when you lose weight and you become all fit and buff, that's not it. It doesn't stop there, right? You have to keep going to the gym if you want to keep looking good.
Yep.
So every now and again, if you have to check back in with the therapist or you have to go in for a maintenance session, do that. Or if you can find another way yourself, you have to maintain that. So when you finally fix, and so that's what happened with me, is I went through all of the therapy, all of the work, and I thought, okay, I'm fixed. I'm ready to go. And after a little while,
and then that backhand
I hit rock bottom again. And
that's why you got to stay on top of it, because that backhand is always coming. There's always going to be something. You need to have a routine, and you need to, even on your good days, your best days, you need to do the things that make your mental right.
That's
whatever that may be. I
was like, oh, I have to maintain this. Oh, I have to do work for the rest of my life. Don't let that sound daunting. But, once you finally get yourself right, for lack of a better term, it doesn't stop there. The work continues. Doesn't mean you got to be in therapy forever. If it does, fine. Sometimes I say if I could see a therapist, 1 hour a week, I would do it for the rest of my life. But because there's just something cool about learning about way this thing on my shoulders works and operates. But you really have to maintain it. Just like you can't lose 20 pounds and stop going to the gym. You have to maintain that. And you have to keep doing whatever it is that keeps you in a healthy state of mind.
Yeah, my wife told me that this morning. I last 2 weeks or so, since Miami, I've just been so busy, and haven't been sleeping, and my kids have been sick, and this rest is obviously so key, which is something I didn't know when I was younger. If you're in your 20s, get some fucking sleep, some sober sleep. You'll feel a lot better. But I haven't been sleeping, and that kills my mental. That puts me in that's when it gets tough, is if I'm not sleeping. And then I woke up this morning and she looked at me and she's like, "You look like shit. What is going on with you?" I was like, "I'm kind of been down in the dumps more than usual the past 2 weeks, I'd say." And she was like, "Listen, do whatever you need to do. If you need to take less work, do that. If you need to go back to bed right now, do that. If you need to go to the gym for 3 hours, do that. Meditate, read your Stoicism books, read Marcus Aurelius, whatever you need to do it and get back on your routine. And I did. And I feel a lot better this afternoon.
Crazy how just a 20-minute little walk or for me, it's my new thing is a bath at the end of every night. No cell phone, the lights
That's
are
nice.
off. I force my mind to slow down because this thing just cranks like a little hamster on a hamster wheel all day long.
Yeah.
So wow, man, Kevin, holy cow, what an inspiration you've been. What a wealth of knowledge. Really cool to see, that we've walked similar paths and we have very many of the same similar values and ethos and that kind of thing. Just really, man, super freaking cool. Thank you.
This was
so
lovely.
much.
I could talk about mental health forever. I find it fascinating. I would have been a psychology major if I could do statistics, but I can't do
Oh,
that.
me too. And if you looked at my bookshelf, you would think I was a psychology major, not a chemistry major, and not a captain. So, we're gonna have to come back and we're gonna have to do a
chemistry.
part
So
2
you're
or
smart.
something. Ah, yeah, I was. Yeah, I
The only
don't
C
know.
I ever got in my entire life was chemistry. There was the teacher was my football coach.
Oh, that's too funny. That's too funny. Well, oh goodness gracious. So we're going to have to do a part 2 for sure. We're going to have to get together every opportunity we can because you're very passionate about some of the same things I am in this industry. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me on. This was wonderful. I'm glad we sat next to each other on the trolley.
Me too. Funny how things like that work out.
Uh-huh.
All right, there.
You
There you have it, everybody. You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.